Kia ora, my name is Adam Hyde, co-founder of the Collaborative Knowledge Foundation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about actually a lot of the things that have already been talked about, give a little bit of an insight of what editorial actually looks like and link that to the modularity that we've been talking about, and also talk a little bit about open source as a product and what that means and how it means that you own the product, which I think is a critical difference between renting a proprietary system and literally owning your own product. Because open source is a shared ownership model in many senses, but it still means that you own it. So starting with this off the bat, scratching the publisher's itch is what I want to talk about. Very unhygienic framing. I'll try and clean it up, but it comes from this this kind of very famous quote by Eric Raymond, who's kind of the self-appointed social anthropologist of open source. He wrote this very famous book, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, and it's basically he's talking about two different models. The cathedral model, which is a very sort of very finely designed, orchestrated model. We have high priests and hierarchy right down to the bottom, and the people come in and they sit there and they behave themselves. And the bazaar model, which is sprawling sort of like seeming chaos, owned by the people. The people are both those in charge of the commerce and populating the market and being part of the whole environment, right? So more sort of mixed level egalitarian model, I guess, or flat model. And this is the model that he believes works best for open source. And the other one, the cathedral, is kind of, you do see it in open source, but it's more a proprietary model for software. So the bazaar model starts basically by, there's a developer out there and they have a problem and they go ahead and solve it, right? So they might think that some layer in the internet protocols is not secure enough, so they go away and they have a passion for this. They have a insight into how to solve this problem, and so they solve this problem. And then because they know people that are associated with them that have same sort of problem, that software gets adopted and they draw other developers to it, right? And this is how the community model basically develops within open source. But in publishing, we have a kind of like a different problem in a way, in that most publishers are not development houses, right? The developers exist somewhere else. And it's not a technical problem, purely technical problem that we're talking about. A lot of problems in publishing are problems that, inverted commas, users have, right? So production editors or authors or reviewers or senior editors or whoever, they have these horrible problems because they're dealing with horrible softwares and that are in name only workflow management softwares, but are basically databases that they have to tether themselves to. And so the open source proposition is like, well, let's look at the bazaar model and let's see how we can involve publishers in something that they haven't done so much in the past, which is taking ownership of their own product and developing that product. Not necessarily being the developers, in some cases this might be true, but being part of the community that takes ownership and responsibility for the development of their workflow tools. Right, so that's the proposition for open source to the publishing sector. So basically, if we're going to do this, then publishers have to be central to the development model, right? So the people with the itch, not being developers, but being publishers, they have to design their own software. That's basically the proposition. It sounds scary. It's not that scary. Software is actually, believe it or not, can actually be fun. I don't know. That might be difficult for you to swallow right now. I could also say that maybe editorial workflow could be fun. We're trying to do both. We're trying to make designing editorial workflows fun. So it's an ambitious goal. So the whole idea with this is that you design first and you design with the user, right? The user being not a user in traditional open source models and also proprietary models for developing software. The user is kind of the last mile proposition, right? You develop something, you give it to them, and you listen to their complaints. And the user in this model is very parasitic in a sense. They use what they have been given. But we should be really reframing user. I use it here just because it's something we understand. But the user is actually a use case specialist, right? Somebody with a whole professional career worth of experiences, and we need to harness these and bring them into the core of designing these experiences, bring them into the core of designing the solutions that they need. So the whole idea is to design first with the publishers, and then build it out, and then they take ownership through that process, and you get the result that you want. So I just want to talk about an example, right? So this is use case specialists designing their own software. So this was using Editoria. I'm going to just show you this very briefly. An example, Editoria. So this is Kate Warden and Cindy Fulton, Kate on the left and Cindy on the right from UCP. And they are production editors and lovely people. And they've never designed software systems in their life, right? Not ever. So we asked them to design a system, design their own system. So what we did is we facilitated them through a process which we've designed ourselves for the collaborative design of software systems, publishing systems. And it's a very elaborate process, but essentially what we do is we facilitate them, we put them in the room, and we start talking about, first of all, what are the problems that they face, right? And that's basically a sort of cathartic process of them outing all the issues that current systems cause them, right? Which is a lot. What's kind of interesting about most modern or most available workflow systems in publishing at the moment is that you have sort of one central data store, but all the workflow is actually managed all over the place. Whether in Notepad or wikis or wherever you like. It's a sort of it's an ecology of systems that support their workflow, and they have to interact with each of them. So they are sort of like a conduit within the system. So, understanding exactly their role in this is very important. You have to understand their pain points. You have to understand, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, before you start designing with them, right? So we went through this process, and then what we do is we facilitate the use case specialists to imagine a solution, right? So what would a utopia look like for you, right? And you can go big picture on this, and then you slowly hone it down to get to more, and that's our job, is to slowly put this big picture on the rails, right, of software development. Like, how could you take these big imaginations and actually make them concrete, make them something that you can actually make, you can develop? And we do this in a very iterative process. So we say, okay, think big picture, and then we'll break it down, and you look at, like, let's come back together and design this little bit of it, and we get into real detail, and then we develop it, and we come back to them and say, is this what you meant? And they say, wow, yes, but it's even better. Which is actually what happens. And that's what I mean, this can be fun, right? You actually put people in a room, you have a conversation. This is what software should be. Software should be a conversation. It should involve you as the use case specialists. You're not the parasites to the system. You actually should be the most important voice in saying how these systems look and act. Anyway, so what you can see here is Kate and Cindy. Cindy's got a whiteboard marker in her hand, and she's scribbling on the window, I think, which we've since discovered it's not actually a whiteboard window. And she's designing a software system, right? So if we look at this, you can see the whiteboard and lots of scribbles. And what we did is that night we just drew it out on a piece of paper. You think about software development, you think about it as being this very sort of top-down, often, process of rigorous requirements gathering, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be like that. Software development models evolve, right? And this particular model that we use is very conversational, and it's very visual. It gives you an opportunity to think about and look at the things that you think that you need in a very iterative process. So what you can see here is what Kate and Cindy has drawn, right? Which is basically, you can see at the top is sort of a box, and there's a drop-down menu, and there's an edit button, and then there's some check boxes, and then we just drew this out. We synthesized it. Is this what you want? Yes, this is what it is. And I'll talk a little bit about what part of the system this is. So there's some status buttons and blah, 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 blah. And then we took it to Julian, who's our French-based, he's also French, UX expert. And he mocked it up and said, is this what you want? Which obviously looks a little bit better than that, which looks a lot better than that. And they said, yep. And then we built it, and this is the working code, right? So they have literally designed their own software. We're not overhyping this. It's very important in this process that they do design it, because it brings about two possibilities. First of all, is that they get what they want, but also software is a tool which enables cultural change, right? And cultural change is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. And if you have the use case specialists designing the software, then the process of developing the software has cultural change embedded in it, right, which is very important. And publishers, I don't know if you know this, but they're not very fast to change in these areas. It's just something I've noticed. And so you've got to find ways that can help them change, right? It's got to be something that feels comfortable, feels like, you know, this is something you want to do, that you are able to do it. And you are able to do it. You are use case specialists. You are not users. So, and then this is another part of the working code. So this is Editoria. So we've developed this monograph production suite, scholarly monograph production suite in this way. It's going through production tests at the moment. In fact, today is another round of production tests. And I want to show you a little bit about this, because I also want to couple this so you know that we're talking about something very real. But also I want to talk a little bit about the modularity of systems, right? And how what you see here is Editoria, which is a monograph production suite, but you can reuse a lot of these components to build out a journal system, which is currently what we're doing. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Yeah? Oh, okay, good. Right. Now, where am I going to go to next? Okay, so let me go to this. This is the first time I've done this. I hope it works. This is a whiteboarding system, and ooh, wow, that's crazy. I've got to find my pen. It's disappeared. Oh, this will do. You can see that, eh? It doesn't matter. So the pen has actually disappeared. Oh no, here it is. Okay. So this is a box, and we're going to call this Pub Suite. All right. So Pub Suite is basically, it's like a content management system, but it has no front end, right? So the front end is what Editoria is. So we develop components that fit into the back end, the Pub Suite back end. And why this is important is because you can build CMSs, content management systems, that can conform to your workflow, right? So this is what we did when we worked with the Editoria people, is that we're designing with them a system that meets their workflow requirements. The back end is still the same, right? But the front end are all individualized, custom-made components. And the back end can be reused to develop a journal system, right? So this is, in Editoria's case, we have basically these components. We have a dashboard, we have a book builder, and we have an editor, right? And we can reuse a lot of these components in building a journal system, right? In a journal system, you don't need a book builder, but you might need an issue management system, for example, sort of similar, maybe not, kind of. You can at least fork it and rework it and make it into an issue or collection management system. But you probably need a dashboard and an editor, right? So just to say that this modularization not only means that different developers can come and work on this and have ownership, as John's pointed out, but different sets of users can take on ownership of these products as well and start being involved in owning them and taking responsibility for the development and designing them, things like this, right? Because it's the users, the use case specialists that need them at the end of the day. So in other words, Editoria, UCP can take ownership of these and develop them in the way they want, and if the greater community develops around it, at some point somebody might decide they want another component. They can fork something and build their own component to add it to Editoria, or they might replace some of the components completely, right? So this enables you to take ownership of your own product. So I'm just going to show you very quickly what these components mean. So this is the dashboard that we talked about with Editoria, right? So it's just a list of books that you currently are working on. And if I press edit, then I get what I mistakenly referred to before as like a table of contents. And that's part of designing with the use case specialist, is use the language of the use case specialist. So a lot of the naming of this system comes directly out of Chicago Manual of Style, right? Because I would have called this a table of contents manager, but the production editors think of the table of contents as literally a piece of paper that lists all the content in the book. And because I think more in digital terms, book terms, paper terms, they're more or less the same, which they're not. It's better for the people who use the system to label the system, to name the system. So what you see here is that you see three components, three divisions. You see front matter, body and back matter, right, at the end. The three major divisions according to Chicago Manual Style of a book. And you have here components which in front and back matter are actually have various defaults, right? So you have table of contents, I don't know if you can see that so well, but preface, introduction, right? These are all namings from Chicago Manual Style. Same with the back matter as well. In the body, you have essentially parts and chapters, right? Chapter being a chapter, and parts are like a container for a lot of chapters, right? And which I would have said was a section, which is something else entirely. So what you can do here is, just to show you very briefly, the book builder is this is all it's all dynamic. You can drag and drop items around, move them around. You can add your own components, do what you want, and give them the namings that you wish to have. So basically, you start assembling your book through this interface. And then what you can do is also edit. You can upload Word. I'll show you that in a minute. But you can also edit these components, right? So this is the other edit these chapters. So this is the other part of the system, which is the editor. And what's really important to know about this is that when we talk about modular systems, there's lots of different levels of modularities, right? So you have the dashboard; it's its own thing. Book builder, its own thing. These are literally standalone that you can use and assemble into your own system. The editor is also a standalone, but also you can take various parts of the editor and reformulate them to meet your own specific needs. And this is really critical because content types vary between publishers, not just in terms of the type of publishing they're doing, but between organizations. Like, for example, what you can see on the left, but very barely visible actually, is a list of, there you go. And let's so that some of the elements that UCP have in a book, right? Things like extract poetry, extract prose, blah, blah, blah. So these reflect particular stylings that they need to apply to the book, and and these are custom to them, but it's very easy to change this for another publisher, right? Even if the style may be the same, you might use a different name for it. And it's important to get these things right? You should see a system that reflects how you think about what you do in your own work. You should really be a use case specialist in this sense, The system should reflect your specialist needs. And we have other things in here. We have record changes. One of the things that I hate most in the text production world is track changes. I think it's awful paradigm and should be thrown out as soon as possible. But you try and convince production editors of that. It's hard. In fact, I failed, and so we built it. So what you can see here is track changes. We're calling them record changes. You can do things like you can hide them or show them, set, decline, blah, 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 right? So this supports I won't talk so much about the workflow, but this is built to fit into the workflow. Authors, production editors collaborate around this software, around this interface, to comment and improve the text, which is basically what everyone's trying to achieve. And there's access control mechanisms at play that says sometimes an author can access, sometimes they can't, blah, 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 all configurable by the organizations that's using the software. So, you can accept these and blah, 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 do what you want. We also have, down here, we have comments, so that you can talk about the work as well. You can annotate it, and you can resolve the comments, things like this. We have all standard things like image placement and linking, all these kinds of things. One of the things that we're particularly proud of is one of the cases that Cindy and Kate explained was when it comes to proofing or copy editing footnotes, there's hazardous ways to do this currently, right? Microsoft Word doesn't support this very well. They don't know of any other system that does this very well. And you basically need to annotate, edit, and track changes in notes just as much as you do in the rest of the content, which was surprising to me. So what we have evolved here is a nice little notes panel where you can slide up and see all the notes, right? Or you can put it to the bottom, and you'll notice that this looks like a book to some degree, right? The notes are at the bottom, footnote-ish, endnote-ish, and everything is around here is trying to give you some space that you feel like this is it's page-like, and actually the rendering of the final books out of the system can look pretty much like you see it in the editor as well. I won't go into too much detail about that. So you have notes management here, which also, like if I click on this call out, it brings up the note that it's referring to. And if I put another call out at the top here, another note, it automatically gets renumbered. You don't have to screw around with that. You can put in, type in your notes. Track changes work on notes, as well as commenting as well, right? So the authors and the copy editors can have a discussion also around the notes. So it's just to show that this is a pretty sophisticated system, and it's all been designed by the production staff at UCP, and it's all highly customizable so that you can adapt it to meet exactly your requirements. So I just want to show something very quickly. Another system that we're developing is very modular. It's called Ink, and what Ink does, it's also modular, right? So what Ink does is it's reflecting on what we talked about before. Who wants to build the same file conversion stuff all over again, over and over and over and over again? Of course, this is exactly what happens. So we built Ink, and Ink is a framework that allows you to build modular converters that you can join together to do specific pipelines, conversion pipelines. But it can also be about enrichment or parsing or reading metadata out of content or whatever you want. But the framework exists and is agnostic to what it does, and you build out the little converters, right? And you can share these converters as much as with the workflow systems. You can share these components like the dash. You can also share these converters, right? So I want to show you something very briefly. So this is Editoria and PubSuite are linked. So in the book builder in PubSuite, you can upload a Word file. It sends it to Ink, which sends it to a converter, which sends it, when it's finished, you send this back to PubSuite and it displays in the book, right? So I want to just show you this very briefly. So if I go back to the book builder, oops, second quick. Oh, there's one production bug which I hope I wasn't going to fall over. I just fell over it. I'll just do this. I go here. Right, so if I go to something like, I'll just add another component perhaps. If I go upload Word, right, I go desktop and I choose this this chapter that's already sitting here for me. If I open this, it will send this to Ink and convert it through a series of really sophisticated converters that we have built for converting docx files to HTML. Right. So first of all, maybe I should show you. If I go to the actual document, you can get a little bit of a look and see what it looks like. So this is the document that we're going to convert. Right. You can see it's got page numbers, it's got a heading, it's got the title, a footnote right at the bottom. So if I go over here and I choose this, and then I go to Ink, and I have to refresh this page just to show you. We will see the process of the conversion happening in real time. So it's a bit slow. There we go. So you can see here we're going through the steps. You see this on the right? It's just converting the docx to HTML. Now it's going to header promotion, which basically, because as we know, authors don't follow a consistent schema for marking up headings. We do a lot of calculations based on font size and length of line and all this sort of magical stuff to work out what's probably a heading and what's not. And then in the end, we get the result. So this was actually initiated by Editoria, and you can see it's loaded here, a little green check mark is loaded here. And if I press edit, I get to see that this is the chapter that we just loaded. And what's interesting here is you see the notes have loaded into notes, right? It recognizes the notes that was in that document as a note. So it's done some smart thinking. It's gone through, ink has gone through the Word file, worked out what it thinks the structure of the document is, and then loaded it into Editoria for you to start work on. So I have a couple of minutes. 1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 minute. So just to go back to the book. So this is, as I said before, it's a component-based system. So you can actually think about this has been reusing a lot of these components. This is the same editor, but to work on scientific materials, right? And then building workflow components around it for control of review cycles, for invitation of reviewers and confirmation that they're going to do the review, through to them writing the reviews, collecting them, synthesizing them, and sending them back to the author with a decision. All these kinds of things, these are very simple components to build. So a lot of the components already exist in the book production system. You can borrow them and design another system that would enable you to support the workflow for your specific journal, not for journals, but for your specific journal. So that you, as the use case specialist with very specialist needs, very special culture that you work with, very special content that you work with, you can actually have a system that matches exactly what you need. It's not just bought off the shelf and approximates something like what journal publishing is, but is actually designed by you specifically for you. And you have absolute ownership of that product, not just in terms of you've designed it, but it's open source, so it's yours forever. It's never going to be taken away from you. Great. Thank you. That's my presentation.